Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your host of the most, Underdonetoast here, coming live. This is not a chess video. This is actually going to be a political video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Underdonetoast is giving his prediction of the 2024 election cycle results. That being said, if you guys are here for chess, I won't mind if you skip the video. This is very political. But with that being said, let's hop right into how this is going to work. First of all, I want you guys to know that I am completely unbiased in this. Everything that we're going to be going for is going to be analytical, going over polls, going over history, and it's not going to have anything to do with who I endorse or who I am voting for personally. So the way that we're going to be doing this is through these 5 tabs. Okay, so this first one is going to be giving us the current election cycle, if the polls were accurate and if it was held today. Knowing that, you guys should know that today is September 27th, 2024. There is still over a month to go until the election. So the election is not tomorrow, obviously. Things could change in the next month. But my prediction is what is going on today and what would happen, in my opinion, if the presidential election did happen today. So with this, we could also click on any state. It's going to give us the current polls. It's going to tell us what the margin of victory is. And it's showing us right now that Harris and Walz is at 215, Trump and Vance are at 219, with 104 being toss-ups. Moving on to the next tab, we have basically the same thing, except we can click on states and say whether we think that it's going to lean Democrat or Republican. This is where we're going to be making our very own map. So let's say Arizona is Republican, Pennsylvania's Democrat. Then it's going to change the electoral college results up here in those numbers. On to the next. We're going to be given the historical presidential election information by state. For example, if we were to go to Oregon, it's going to show us how Oregon has voted in presidential elections all the way back until 1976. We can see Democratic, 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 Democratic. They almost always vote blue. And I do believe that this is going to play an important part in predicting the next election. Next tab, we're going to be showing the polling from 2020, specifically how inaccurate or accurate they were. If we were to go to Wisconsin, for example, we're going to see that Joe Biden was predicted to win by 6.7 percentage points in the polls. However, he only came on top by 0.7, a pretty large difference. On the other hand, if we were to go to Arizona, it's going to show us that Biden did win by 0.3 and is predicted to win by 0.9. So these polls in Arizona were a lot more accurate than in Wisconsin. I know that polling now is different than it was then, but it's giving us somewhat of an idea of how voters in each state say they're going to vote as compared to how they actually vote. Final tab is just going to be showing us the presidential election results from 2020. So we could hover over any state. It's going to tell us the results. If it has these lines through it, then that means that it was a very close call. For example, looking back at Arizona, Joe Biden did win. State is blue by only 0.3 percentage points. All right, guys, so with that being said, let's go and hop right into it. Let's predict who we think is going to win in the 2024 presidential election. And let me drink some Kirkland water, and we'll hop into it here. Sponsor for today's video, Kirkland. Go check them out, only at Costco. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to be moving from left to right, maybe with a few exceptions of really, really close calls. All right, so starting with Nevada. Nevada is usually a blue state. Harris currently is by 1.2 points. Let's go ahead and look at the 2020 election to see how off the polls were. It looks like they were incredibly accurate. Joe Biden was predicted to win by 2.4, and he did win by 2.4. Okay, but how does Nevada usually vote in presidential elections? Well, we're going to go here, and we're going to see that they have been blue for the last 4 presidential election cycles. Because she's up by 1.2, and polling was so accurate in 2020, and because Nevada is usually blue, we're going to give that to Harris. Moving on to Arizona. Looking at the polling for Arizona these days, we see that Trump is currently up by 2 percentage points. Fairly comfortable lead, but how do things look in 2020? Well, they were off by about 0.7 in favor of the Democrats. So it was predicted that Joe Biden would win by 0.9 percentage points. He won by 0.3. So I'd say that the polling was fairly accurate, maybe a little swinging too much in the Democrats' favor. However, since Trump is currently up by 2, and last time it voted or is swung too much in the Democrats' favor, we're going to say that it's going to Trump. And if you guys want to see how Arizona usually fares, just out of curiosity, we're going to see that they almost are always red, except for in 2020. So because of that, just because how the polls are playing right now, we're going to go ahead and give that to Donald Trump. Moving on, we have Minnesota. Minnesota is a very blue state. I'm not sure why it's even counted as a toss-up state. We can see that Harris is up by a ton, a pretty significant amount, about 5 points at the moment. If we go to 2020 and see how things fared in the polling, we're going to see that Joe Biden was predicted to win by 4.3, and he actually got an absolute landslide with 7 points. So he did much better than the polling said he would do. Okay, so we're not even going to look at the history of Minnesota. We're just going to give that to Harris. I think that one's pretty obvious. Wisconsin, we're going to skip for a moment. It's an extremely tight state, in my opinion. We're going to come back to it, and we'll go over it plenty, don't worry. So moving on to Michigan, we're going to take a look at the polling, and we're going to see that Harris is up by about 2 points. So pretty comfortable lead. Well, what happened in 2024, I think I misspoke there. In 2024, Harris is currently up by 2. In 2020, Biden was predicted to win by about 4. He won by 3. So the polling was off a little bit. It swung in the Democrats' favor by about 1 extra percentage point. However, with that being said, Harris is currently up by 1.8. If the polling was as inaccurate this time as it was last time, then that would mean that Harris is going to win by 0.8. We can go ahead and see how Michigan usually fares in voting for their presidents, and we're going to see that it's almost always blue. Okay, so because of that, Trump did win in 2016, but because of how polls are looking this time as compared to his 2020, we're going to give that to Kamala Harris. Nebraska 2nd District. Not a whole lot to say on that one. It's almost always blue. I believe that the polls are saying it's very blue. Yeah, Harris is up by 11. I don't think it's a toss-up. I think that it is going to Kamala Harris. Pennsylvania, we're going to skip. Very close call. Moving on to North Carolina. Oh, we are on the wrong map. There we go. Moving on to North Carolina. Trump is currently up by 1.2. So just a little bit, not a whole lot. Looking at the polling from 2020, we're going to see that it did predict a Trump win, but only by 0.2. Trump did win by 1.3. So about 1 point 1 point more towards Republicans than the polling suggested. Looking at the polling right now in North Carolina, despite all the weird governor stuff going on right now, Trump is up in the polls by 1.2. If the polling is as inaccurate this time as it was last time, then that means that he's up by about 2 points. We're going to go ahead and give that to Donald Trump. And just out of curiosity, if we want to go ahead and see what usually happens in presidential elections, we're going to see it's almost always red. And I do predict it will be red once again. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. In my opinion, these are the big 3 states. These are where everything's going to come down because you have Harris at 247 right now. You have Trump at 246. Extremely tight race, right? I mean, things are just insanely tight here. Let's go ahead and go with Georgia first. We all know what happened in 2020. Georgia has been red forever. As far as I can remember, Georgia has always voted red. And then in 2020, it turned blue. And that absolutely turned the Electoral College upside down on its head. So, huge surprise for everyone. How's the polling looking right now? Well, Trump is ahead by 1.5. So, I'd say that that's a fairly comfortable lead. Looking at the polling, Trump was ahead also in 2020, and Biden actually won. So, if the polling is as inaccurate as it is now, as it was in 2020, then we're looking at about 1.3 points going towards the Democratic side. So this would be 0.2 in Trump's favor. So things are extremely close in Georgia. I think that it's important to take this into account. It's almost always red except for in 2020. Because of that, I'm not holding a crystal ball. I'm not claiming it's for certain going to be red. But looking at the history of Georgia and looking at his 1.5 lead, we're going to go ahead and give this one to Trump. It could very well be blue, but this is a prediction video. I can't just leave these all as toss-ups. I have to make a decision. So we're giving that one to Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and move on to Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is a very strange state when it comes to polling. When we look at the polls right now, Harris is up by 0.9, so about 1 percentage point. I'd say that that's a good amount. But when we look at the polls from 2020, we're going to see that Joe Biden was predicted to have an absolute landslide, almost 7 points, and he only won by 0.7. If the polls are as inaccurate as they were in 2020, that means that they were overestimating the Democrats winning by 6 percentage points. That is a huge margin of error. That would be giving Trump a win here by about 5. Okay, so the polls are saying that Harris is in the lead. However, in 2020, the polls were way off. And if Harris is only in the lead by 1, then it could very well be a Trump victory. Let's go and see what usually happens in presidential elections. Looking at Wisconsin, we're going to see it's almost always blue. It's almost always blue. So even though the polling was so inaccurate in 2020 and Harris is only up by a little bit at the moment, since it's almost always blue, it's very difficult to make a decision here. But I'm going to have to stick with history. I'm going to have to stick with history and give that one to Kamala Harris. Again, not a crystal ball, not a fortune teller. It could go to Donald Trump, but history is almost always blue. Harris is in the lead. Let's give that to Kamala Harris. So we have Harris and Walz, 257, and Trump and Vance at 262. It's all coming down to Pennsylvania at the moment. So, this is intense, people. Let's see what happens. Pennsylvania. Currently, Harris is barely in the lead, 0.4 percentage points. If we look back at 2020, we're going to see that the polling was extremely accurate. Joe Biden was predicted to win by 1.2. He did win by 1.2. This is such a small margin of victory that we're going to go ahead and look at the history of Pennsylvania. It's almost always blue. Almost always blue. Very small margin of victory for Harris. We're going to have to give that to Harris. That, ladies and gentlemen, would secure the win for the Democrats with 276 electoral college votes. Again, I'm not endorsing anyone. I won't even say who I'm voting for, right? I'm completely unbiased. This is all analytical. But based off of my prediction, I currently predict, using this and the 13 Keys to the White House by Alan Lichtman, that Kamala Harris will be our next president of the United States. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Did I get anything wrong? Do you guys disagree with any of the polls? Do you guys disagree with any of my predictions? I'm happy to hear you guys out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, share, favorite, and follow, and donate. Make sure you go check out my sponsor, Kirkland Water, only found at Costco.com. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.